All right, I'm a high school shop teacher and it is just turned into summertime. And so I'm used to spending 10 months of my year in an incredibly well equipped shop. We have sanding rooms, we have assembly tables, I have two saw stop cabinet style table saws, I have a nice planer, I have a great miter saw station, I have a finishing room, I have two drill presses, which are great to have. I have a couple of bandsaws. I have router tables. I even have some peripheral things like lasers and not one, but two, but three CNC routers, as well as just a ton of clamps. And there's really a lot of space to work with. And so I'm really fortunate to work in a space during the year that has that. But when I get home, I have a 4x8 shed. And so for the summer, these are the tools that I have. And I'd really like to continue woodworking. It's primarily a hodgepodge of hand tools, a variety of power tools that I've kind of assembled over the year. I do have a small kind of assembly work table that I've built that nests right into the shed. And so it's nice weather during the summer. I can pull that out and I can work on it. I do have a small little miter saw that I'm actually going to try to keep out of the loop. And then my 3D printer I'm going to lean on pretty heavily as well. But the primary mover for the summer is going to be my circular saw. So I need to be able to do cross cuts and rip cuts, basically get the functionality of the table saw into my backyard without having an actual table saw. So cross cuts are pretty simple with the circular saw. You have a couple of sleds that or jigs that you can make. The rip cut is, I think, a lot harder to do consistently. You can try to emulate like a track saw approach, but I built this sled to basically get consistent rip cuts so that I can make some of the woodworking projects that I want to over the summer. So it just slides on tracks, and then it has this adjustable fence system that has a ruler on there with a little micro adjust piece, so I can really hopefully dial in some consistent rip cuts. So that's what I'm going to try to do here. I'm going to try to make a relatively simple woodworking project, something that I would make in the shop, and see how it works in the backyard. And so I'm just going to start off by kind of getting the rough prep of my material. I'm going to use redwood fence boards for this because that's the primary material that I use at school as well. So I'm just kind of rough cutting them to length with my circular saw with the cross cut, and then really going to try to get some rip cuts in with the sled that I built. So one of the reasons that I want to do this is because I want to continue woodworking during the summer, and I don't want to have to go into the shop all the time. But also what I really want to do is provide students with a way that they could continue to woodwork on their own. So a lot of them get really into it during the school year, but then they lose all of the tools, right? Almost none of them have really anything at home that they can use. They definitely don't have full table saw setups and planers. And so how could you start woodworking in a way that was manageable and feasible? And so you can buy a cheap circular saw, for $50. I have a couple Ryobis that are around there. But even a really nice one is like $100. And so it's something that you can do, that's approachable. And so here I am just dialing in my first rip cut, trying to get a bunch of 1.5 inch strips. So the first part of this project is just generating a bunch of 1.5 inch strips from my stock material. So I'm just going to run through that, and then I'll go through some of the variety of kind of how that works in terms of different cuts down the road. But the first part is just, again, the start of how do I kind of rough cut a bunch of this lumber and go from there. All right, one of the things that I hadn't really thought through but came up pretty quickly is dust collection. So as I'm cutting these, there's nowhere for the dust to go, so it's just kind of building up and becoming a problem with me lining things up. So right now I'm just going to blow it out, but hopefully I can come up with a better dust collection system down the road. So this is just another view of kind of how this works. You can see I'm using T-tracks to hold it down in place. Safety is a huge piece for me with this, right? I got to have my hands out of the way. I want to have it secured where it's not with my hands for myself, but also for students. And so that T-track allows me to really securely get in there. And now I've just transitioned it to cross-cutting. So I've set it to 8 inches, and then I can very quickly cross-cut these. So I've basically built these 1.5 inch by 8 inch pieces. And I'm going to get a bunch of those, and then I'm going to have to cut some 45 degrees. And that's where my 3D printers help me out, and I've just made a little 45-degree insert that you'll see in a second that will allow me to create a mitered cut on these. So basically, can I do cross cuts, rip cuts, miter cuts using just my circular saw, do it relatively quickly, and do it consistently. So I really love the 3D printer that I have in terms of being able to take projects and make them really repeatable and functional. The 3D printer is huge. It's the most versatile tool that I have. I do teach computer-aided design as part of this course that I have, and so you know, I have that skill set that really helps out. But when I'm looking at just making simple jigs or templates, the 3D printer is invaluable to me. It really speeds things up and gives me the flexibility for creating things that are kind of one-offs but make a huge, huge difference. So I've got all my mitered cuts, and now what I need to do is basically clean them up. My second favorite tool in the shop is the planer, and I don't have anything like that at home, so I'm just using a hand plane to clean these up. And it's fine. It's not perfect. It's not as nice as it would be if I had planed them down first, which is what I would do in the shop, but it's working. So just kind of cleaning these up by hand, and that'll be good for me for the summer too, just to work with more hand tools as I have going forward, because those are obviously accessible to me and to students. Here's my second 3D printer piece for this project. I have just these little inserts with drill bit hole guides. So I have them set to a specific size and location, and I can just pop those in and then basically drill out the holes in the same spot every time without having to measure it. So this really speeds up the process for what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm realizing I haven't talked about what I'm actually building here. So I'm trying to make one of these flip down coat racks. So I have to insert the dowels on them and then basically assemble it all together. This is cross-cutting to length. This is just a really simple bench hook shooting board that I built to try to get a little bit more practice again with my hand tools. So just getting everything lined up, making sure that it's square and then set down, and then I'm just going to attach a back piece on there. And I'm going to use a nail gun that I have. It's definitely a luxury item, but for me it makes a huge, huge difference. So I know not everybody has a nail gun, but it would actually be one of the kind of first things that I purchase. So with the circular saw and with the nail gun, you can get there pretty quickly and just makes things more fun and easier to look at. All right, I need to make some bevel cuts, and so this is the second major jig that I've built for my circular saw for the summer. And so what I can do is attach a board down below and then secure it again with T-track and a clamp. And then what will happen is I can cut different degree angles. So this is set right now, I have two on there of 45 and 30. And so it has a track. I'll set the saw to 45, and then I can just follow that across and I'll get a nice beveled cut. And then I can do things like French cleats from there. And so that's, again, one of the table saw can do that really easily. You can tilt the blade, and while you can tilt the blade very easily on the circular saw, trying to be able to cut those consistently, those bevels, is really tricky. And so I wanted to make another jig that I could do that with. So now that I have that piece, I can go back to and rip cut that down to size. And now I've made a nice French cleat. I realized as I did that, I used the piece of lumber that I drilled all the holes into. And so I'm gonna have to do it again, but the idea makes sense. So, and it's the same. So I can I can make cross cuts, rip cuts, bevel cuts, miter cuts, all with my circular saw. Do it safely, do it quickly, do it reliably, and that's gonna be huge for being able to basically do the woodworking projects that I want to. All right, so just getting it secured and then cutting off the ends of the dowel. And then I need basically end caps to kind of cover that up so you can't see it, because it's gonna sit out from the wall. It has a French cleat on the back. So I cut those again with my rip cut jig and then glued them up, put them in the clamps, and basically I'm getting close to done. So they all flip up and come back down. I'm gonna clean up that edge real quick. So just using that very quick and dirty crosscut circular saw crosscut jig. I need a new battery in it, but go ahead with that. Bring it across, zip them off, and then use a hand saw to kind of flush trim up those end pieces. And then I do have a Ryobi random orbit sander to kind of clean up edges and go from there. And so it's pretty much done. So the real question now is, was it worthwhile? And so it was fun to do. It took a couple hours, and it felt like real woodworking. So I was able to make, a good beginner project. There's some complexity to it. It felt safe. It felt, it's not the same as working in a fully functional shop, but definitely doable and something that I can do in my backyard. And so I'm excited to see kind of what projects I can come up with. Really looking at the circular saw, and then down the road, like if people want to move forward with really minimal tools, how do they do that? All right, thanks for watching.